Hello, and welcome to Beating Heart Disease. My name's Kevin Wells. I'm a heart disease survivor. I had a quadruple bypass about a year and a half ago. Today we're going to be talking about vitamin C. We're going to be talking about natural vitamin C. We're going to be talking about man-made vitamin C and the argument for and against natural versus synthetic. Just want to start out by saying that I am fasting. I've been fasting for about 20 hours now, so if I'm a little bit off, I apologize. But anyway, I just want to start out by saying that I am not a medical professional. I am not a scientist. I am not a researcher. So anything that I suggest here, I suggest you talk it over with your doctor and see if it's something you should add or subtract to your routine. Anyway, vitamin C. The reason why I'm making this video is there was kind of an uproar on a post that was on Facebook talking about whether vitamin C is natural. The man-made vitamin C, is that the same thing as the natural vitamin C? Kind of a big uproar and stuff. And most people think that absorbic acid is the same as the vitamin C you get in nature. And molecularly wise, on a molecular scale, it is the same. But we're going to talk a little more about my misgivings as far as taking the supplement over the natural version. So let's take a look at how vitamin C is made by man, how man-made vitamin C is made. As you can see, there's seven different processes here. You've got the first one, which is starch hydrolysis. That's where they start out with D-glucose, which is basically corn sugar. And then number two is hydrogenation, which is, if you know your dieting and that kind of stuff, you know that hydrogenating anything, eating anything hydrogenated is bad. So anyway, it's D-glucose is converted into D-sorbitol through hydrogenation. And then sorbitol is fermented, and that makes it L-sorbose. And then number four, we have acetonation, which acetone is used to create it into L-sorbose, I guess, or it's coupled with L-sorbose, put it that way. And if you remember acetone, maybe from like college or high school science class, or maybe photography class, if I remember correctly, acetone was used in developing film. So it's it's caustic. You had to wear gloves and glasses to make sure it didn't splash in your eyes. Number five, we have oxidation, where basically it's made into it creates L-gluconic acid. So we're getting closer. We're getting closer to absorbic acid. And then another hydrolysis occurs, and that's using hydrochloric acid. They take the L-gluconic and they treat it with hydrochloric acid, which if you remember your science from high school, that was one that is very caustic. It could burn you very quickly. It is a nasty acid that you don't want to ever handle without gloves and protection. Anyway, so that creates a crude absorbic acid, and then it gets recrystallized and ground into a fine powder, and that's what they make the tablets, lozenges, and powders that you enjoy. Now, on a molecular scale, that is the same as what's found in nature. Vitamin C in nature is the same as the man-made vitamin C. It is absorbic acid, just the same. But looking at all that process, all these processes in order to make it, for man to make it, I just have problems calling it natural in any way. Another thing is, right now we know that the smallest, molecular wise it's the same, which means it has the same atoms But right now we know that atomic is the smallest scale. That's the smallest we can see in our current human ability. But what will our human ability be in 100 years or 200? Maybe we'll be able to see smaller than the atomic, and then we'll see. Well, wait, a lot of this stuff, the hydrogenation was still somehow attached, or the hydrochloric acid was still somehow active in some way. You know, I don't know that harm people. I just have a lot of problems calling this natural in any way. But let's look at how vitamin C occurs in nature. Now, if you're eating a plant, this is kind of what it looks like in a plant. You get this. It's called a complex, basically, and you have tyrosinase at the center, which is basically a copper metallic center, which kind of holds everything, together, gives it kind of a center, something to anchor to. And then you have K vitamins, P vitamins, J vitamins, ascorbic, biflavonoid complexes as well. And then you can see the absorbic acid, which is 6CH8O6, and that is the exact same thing that we just talked about that was being made by man. It is exactly the same. You can see this actually holds the whole thing together. It's actually the antioxidant that holds this whole complex together. So unless you took all of these things together, you're not getting the same thing. And even if you took them all in a supplement, it's still not the same thing as getting it in this complex, because they're not going to be released the same way when it gets absorbed by your body. You can't. It's very hard for man to simulate nature. I mean, it's really, really hard. We've tried, and we've failed many, many times at trying to simulate nature. So I really have a problem trying to call this, man-made absorbic acid natural. But so in animals, though, animals do produce absorbic acid on its own in their own system. Most animals, unfortunately, humans, primates, and some other unfortunate animals do not produce their own vitamin C or absorbic acid, and so we have to get it from ingesting or consuming food or other things that bring it into our system. Mostly food supplements, that stuff. The problem is with, say, an animal. If an animal creates absorbic acid, the process by which they introduce that absorbic acid into the needed parts of their body is probably quite different than if you take a pill of absorbic acid. It goes through your digestive system and then enters the rest of your body, your bloodstream, and that kind of stuff. That's totally different from when a thing metabolizes it themselves, an animal metabolizes it themselves and introduces it into their body. It's a totally different thing when you're taking it in pill form, and then it's having to be broken down by your system, and then it goes through a whole different process than if it had been created by your body. So that's another thing that I have a little bit of issue with, the natural being better than synthetic. There's another interesting thing that I came across that bothers me. It's on this graph here, where it's talking about the melting point or the decomposition of C6H8O6, which is the man-made absorbic acid, which technically is the same as the natural absorbic acid. Now, when you cook natural vitamin C, it loses 40 to 60% of the vitamin C. If you cook a fruit or a vegetable that has vitamin C, it loses 40 to 60%. Now, there's no way, unless you're pressure cooking it at really high heats, there's no way you're getting it up to 374 to 378 degrees. So what is happening with the man-made version that isn't happening with the natural version? The natural version decomposes at a lot lower temperature. So why does the man-made version decompose at 374 to 378 degrees Fahrenheit? I mean, when you boil water, it can only get to 220 degrees. It can't get any hotter than that. Unless you pressurize it, that's as hot as it's going to get. So even if you pressurize it, you're probably, you might be able to get into the 300s, maybe. You might be able to get to this 374, 378 with pressurization. But with steam, basically. But it's still a massive question of why this decomposes at such a higher temperature than natural vitamin C. I just don't quite understand it. Another thing you can look at is the emergency response recommendations here. If something happens, this is the man-made absorbic acid. It says like firefighting, you can use dry chemical, nothing new there. But when you get down to like wear protective clothing, you need a respirator. Of course, I mean, even if you were cleaning up like ashes or anything like that, they're going to say you could do that. So that's nothing really too spectacular. Then you get down to eyes. If it gets in the victim's eyes, flush for 20 to 30 minutes. Call a hospital or poison control center while you're doing that. Then we get down to skin. Immediately flood affected skin with water while removing. Gently wash all affected skin areas. So that sounds like hydrochloric acid. Basically, almost the same thing that hydrochloric acid would say if you got that on your skin. Inhalation. Immediately leave the contaminated area. Take deep breaths of fresh air. And on and on. And then we got ingestion, which is what you're taking when you take the supplement. Do not induce vomiting. The reason why I say do not induce vomiting is because it's going to make it worse by bringing it back up. At most acids, all acids, they say do not induce vomiting with acids. You always want to try and dilute it. So it says the victim is conscious, not convulsing. Give 1 to 2 glasses of water to dilute the chemical. Kind of surprised they don't say milk, because you used to say milk to dilute it. But and immediately call a hospital or poison control center. So it's very serious if you ingest this, and it doesn't say how much. It doesn't say how much. If it said how much, then if it said like 5,000 grams or something, then okay, I can understand that. But people take supplements. Some people are taking supplements in the 100 gram, at the 100 gram level a day. That's a lot. That's a lot of man-made absorbic acid. And here it's saying if you ingest it, you should be calling a poison control center and dilute with water. It says be prepared to transport the victim to the hospital if advised by a physician. If the victim is convulsing or unconscious, obviously it can cause convulsions and unconsciousness, otherwise they wouldn't say it. Do not give anything by mouth. Ensure the victim's airway is open and lay the victim on his or her side with the head lower than the body. Again, do not induce vomiting, because again, it's caustic. Immediately transport the victim to the hospital. There's also another thing that I ran across. It's kind of curious that I think goes along with this. A lot of people will say, well, it probably doesn't have anything to do with it. And here we have a chart showing death rates through the 20th century in the United States. As you might notice, heart disease is the purple one at the top. You can see it climbed, it skyrocketed starting in the 20s, and it skyrocketed into the 60s. And of course, by then, medical advances came along and people didn't die as much of heart disease. But I can almost guarantee you, if we hadn't found medical advances, that chart would still be going up with the cases of heart disease in the United States. So why do I point this out, this graph out? Because in the 1913 was when mankind really started looking into supplements to cure diseases. One of the first ones was to cure scurvy. So vitamin C was introduced in the 1920s, 1930s as a preventative for scurvy. Vitamin A was also introduced around that time. So when you start to see, okay, well, these supplements started to be introduced, these vitamins started to be introduced into our diets. It was very popular in the 20s to take vitamin A and vitamin C. You can start to see this graph tick up. A lot of people say, well, no, it's processed foods. Processed foods, everybody knows it's processed foods that cause the heart disease rates to go up. Well, processed foods didn't start until 1941. M&M candies was the first processed foods that were given to soldiers during the war that they could take in the field and it wouldn't melt on them. So that was the first processed food. And you can see in 1941, we were well on our way to a heart disease epidemic. So if processed foods caused the epidemic, then why was it well underway for 20 years before processed foods came along? So processed foods, I think, is partly a myth. Now, processed foods that have vitamins randomly added to them, maybe you don't even need the vitamin that's added to it, but it's in there anyway because they feel like they have to add the vitamins to it in order to sell it. This is fortified with vitamin A, this is fortified with vitamin C, this is fortified with vitamin D. Yeah, I'm going to buy that because, hey, it's got more to it. It doesn't mean my body needs it. It just means it's a selling point for them. So if my body doesn't need vitamin D and I'm drinking it or eating it, and that could be somewhat harmful. I mean, just overloading on certain vitamins are not healthy for your body. So I have a feeling part of this has to do with why there is heart disease. The supplementing vitamins that you do not need. Random multivitamins every day, including vitamin C, could be harmful to human beings. So, well, anyway, that's my take on vitamin C and why you should probably be taking it naturally. I'm going to get a lot of flack about this because people, even scientists and everything, they say, well, the natural made is the same as the man-made. They're both the same, no difference. But I beg to differ. In my mind, they are different. Call it whatever you like. I know you can't take as much of a natural one as you can a supplement. You'd have to eat too much food. You just can't eat enough food to get the same effect. But I don't see that caustic version of the man-made vitamin C, absorbic acid, as being healthy. That's my opinion. Anyway, hope you liked this video. If you did, please subscribe. Click the little bell if you want to see when I make another video. Give me a thumbs up if you would. And I hope you liked the video, and thank you for watching.